The electoral system of New Zealand is proportional. Seats in Parliament are allocated in proportion to the number of votes that a party receives. This has been the case since New Zealand adopted mixed-member proportional in the 1990s. Proportional representation is a good thing. Proportional representation eliminates the threat of vote splitting. In doing so, proportional representation makes third parties viable. This gives voters more choice, enriching democracy. This pushes the major parties to be more competitive. This makes the government more legitimate by making it a more accurate representation of the vote. This requires that the government has the support of a larger share of the population. Britain has a first-past-the-post system. In the recent British election, the Labour Party won the vast majority of the seats, with just 33% of the vote. In a proportional system, that could not happen. In a proportional system, they would require the support of other political parties. This means that the government would better represent the will of the people. By giving voters more choices, proportional representation makes parties more accountable to the people. In first-past-the-post systems, parties easily avoid being held accountable by voters due to the lack of viable alternatives. In first-past-the-post systems, politics increasingly becomes defined by lesser evil voting. When there are only two viable choices, you do not need to be good, you just have to be better than the other guy. This encourages the kind of lesser evil politics that we see in Britain and America. In a proportional system, this style of politics does not develop so easily because there are a larger number of viable choices. Anyone who wants a return to first-past-the-post should take a long hard look at the United States and the United Kingdom. Look how rotten and hopeless the political situations of these countries are. Much of this is due to their first-past-the-post electoral systems. These electoral systems severely limit the choices available to voters and reduce the degree to which politics is competitive. Under a first-past-the-post system, many votes are wasted, and there are usually only two viable parties. This creates dangerous perceptions of powerlessness and helplessness. People feel that the system is not providing room for their concerns to be expressed, and often they are right. Proportional representation reduces the number of wasted votes and addresses destructive perceptions of powerlessness and helplessness. Vote splitting ensures that under first-past-the-post systems, there are only two viable candidates. This means that countries are held hostage by two dominant political parties. This can be seen in both the United States and the United Kingdom. This creates a lack of competition and a lack of interest in offering serious policies and good governance. First-past-the-post also makes it possible for a party to win with a minority of the vote. In the 1978 and 1981 elections, the Labour Party got more votes than the National Party. But the National Party won both elections because the distribution of voters in the electorates favoured them. In the 1954 election, the National Party only received 0.2% more votes than Labour. Yet the distribution of that 0.2% gave them 10 more seats than Labour. 1,000 voters gave them 10 additional seats. These kinds of ridiculously disproportionate results are characteristic of first-past-the-post systems. They damage faith in democracy. They undermine democracy and make it look like a joke. They distort the will of the people. Some will argue that a party can still get fewer votes and win an election under a proportional system. In 2017, Labour won, in spite of getting far fewer votes and seats than National. The key difference is that they won by forming a coalition that did represent a majority of the vote. Sure, National got more votes than Labour, but Labour was not in government alone. They were supported by two other parties. the combined vote of these parties was greater than the vote of National. So the will of the majority was still represented, unlike in first-past-the-post systems where governments often come to power with a minority of the vote. First-past-the-post is usually based on single-member constituencies. It was in New Zealand before we adopted mixed-member proportional. The remnants of this are the electorates. This is still the way the system operates in Britain, based around single-member constituencies. One issue with first-past-the-post is that politicians fixate on appealing to marginal constituencies and ignore everyone else. Elections end up being fought in marginal electorates, with everyone else being ignored. Under first-past-the-post, governing parties used to introduce policies designed exclusively to win the favour of marginal seats. They would set up a new infrastructure project to create jobs, for example, just so that they would win the seat in the approaching election. Under first-past-the-post, some electorates and some voters get far more attention than others. Under proportional representation, every vote matters, so this issue does not occur. Some people oppose proportional representation. They are foolish to do so. The benefits of proportional representation are overwhelming. Proportional representation is not perfect, but it has far fewer flaws than first-past-the-post. Proportional representation is far superior to first-past-the-post. There are still improvements to be made. Adopting preferential voting in the electorates would make our electoral system even better. I also want to address the hostility towards list seats. Recently, I have seen some hostility towards the concept of list seats. Of course, in our electoral system, it is list seats that facilitate proportionality. Some people do not like list seats. Some politicians dislike them and refuse to be put on the party list. Some people even want to abolish list seats. Some people hate list seats so much that they want to return to a first-past-the-post system. It is my view that this is misguided. You can abolish list seats while maintaining a proportional system. Open list proportional representation and single transferable vote are proportional systems that do not have list seats. Under these systems, people vote on individual candidates. You can abolish list seats without abolishing proportional representation. The core of the criticism of list seats is the claim that list politicians are unaccountable. Of course, this is incorrect. List politicians are representatives of parties, and parties are directly accountable to the voter. So list politicians can quite easily be punished by voters. They may be less accountable than electorate politicians, but they are still accountable. Some people believe that you should be elected as an individual. Yet even in electorates, people are not elected as individuals. They are elected as representatives of political parties. Do you seriously think anyone would have voted for Simeon Brown or Sam Uffindell if these people were independents? Of course not, because even electorate politicians are elected as representatives of political parties. That is why independents almost never win electorates. Most electorate politicians would never have been elected if they ran as independents. I do not have an issue with any of this. I do not have an issue with list seats. I like party-based politics. I want politics to be focused on parties, not individuals. Party-based politics is better than individual-based politics. Individual-based politics is based more on personality, while party-based politics is based more on policy and values. The latter is preferable by far. Our politics should be based around parties, not individuals. This is a characteristic of developed, efficient, and stable democratic systems. Individual-based politics and weak parties are associated with dysfunctional democracies. Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands are both often mentioned as examples of this. To conclude my thoughts, I think proportional representation is a very good thing. We must maintain this system. And for now, I think we certainly will. Third parties did great in the last election. There is no serious popular appetite for such significant electoral regression. It is crazy to me that anyone would favour a return to a first-past-the-post system. Proportional systems are not perfect. No electoral system is. But they are a hell of a lot better than first-past-the-post.